The DJI Mavic 3 Pro. There's no doubt that this is a great and really cool drone, but I'm not gonna sit here and try to convince you that you need to go buy this drone just to be the cool kid on the block. What I am gonna do is, I'm gonna talk about why this drone made a lot of sense to me, coming from a Mavic 2 Zoom. But I'm also gonna talk about what I like about this drone, what I don't, and what I think is an absolute tease. And I'll also share where I think the Mavic lineup is headed. Let's dive in.
So coming from a Mavic 2 Zoom, what were some things that stood out to me? Immediately, there's a big difference in the overall packaging and quality of the drones. I can tell that DJI has improved significantly over the years. And there's nothing wrong with the Mavic 2 Zoom, I still feel like it's high quality. Actually, one of the first things I noticed was the weight difference. The Mavic 2 Zoom does feel bulkier, heavier. I bought the Mavic 3 Pro with the Fly More combo, and I can tell you that the bag it comes with is very practical. The ND filters are a nice upgrade. They no longer twist in, they just snap into place. But the biggest upgrade so far was the RC controller. I love having that built-in screen, and I wish I would have updated the controller alone years ago. Having that built-in screen is a game changer. You can see here side by side, they're both still very compact. Sure, the screen adds a little bit of bulk, but obviously that's a good trade-off in my opinion. But if you look at the Mavic 2 Zoom, it folds up and folds down nicely, very compact. And the Mavic 3 Pro, although it's a little bit bigger when it comes to the camera, it still folds up nicely. It still is very compact, and you're getting a lot for your money.
So this is my Mavic 2 Zoom. It served me well. This drone has been dependable, it's been reliable. I've been using it for as long as it's been out. I'm the type where I don't necessarily buy the latest and greatest gear just because it's being hyped. It has to make financial sense to me. I have to be able to make my money back. But I gotta admit, the camera was starting to get a bit dated, and more of my clients are asking for drone footages, so it made sense to upgrade to the Mavic 3 Pro. Now with that being said, let's talk about some of the specs, the features, and why this drone was so innovative back in the day.
The Mavic 2 came in two versions, the Pro and the Zoom, and I picked up the Zoom, which had a 12 megapixel and a little over a half-inch CMOS sensor. It took 48 megapixels of super resolution photos, and the biggest feature was it had a zoom. You had a total of 4 times zoom, but really it was a 2 times optical zoom, between 24 to 48 millimeters. Now the Mavic 2 was only able to record in 4K 30. So there was some limitations. And of course, the biggest selling point of the Zoom was the dolly zoom, which was really overused.
Now this is the Mavic 3 Pro. Notice something different? That's right, it has 3 cameras. 2 of those cameras are really exciting, really pro. The third one feels like a absolute tease, but very familiar, hint hint. So let's talk about some of the specs of the Mavic 3. Let's dive into these 3 cameras.
The first one and the highest quality one is your wide-angle 24mm equivalent, and this is your Hasselblad camera. Comes with all of the log features that you could hope for. The second one is a medium telecamera, which has 3 times optical zoom at 70mm equivalent in a fixed aperture of 2.8. And finally, the last one is your telecamera at 7 times optical, 166mm equivalent at f3.4.
Okay, so coming from a Mavic 2 Zoom, switching over to a Mavic 3 Pro, what were my first impressions? What were some of the pros and cons that I noticed right off the bat? I didn't go with the Cine package because I just couldn't justify that extra $1,000 or $1,500 cost. So if you are looking to purchase the Mavic 3 Pro or any Mavic 3, again, another first impression, big pro for me is get the Fly More combo. It makes a lot of sense. You get the ND filters, you get everything that you need to just do what you gotta do right out of the gate. And the ND filters that were included in the Mavic 2 Zoom were phenomenal. And the Mavic 3 Pro just improves on that. It's no longer a twist on, it's a kind of like a rotate and snap in. Something that I also noticed right off the bat, just comparing the 2 drones, the Mavic 2 Zoom feels and looks a lot more beefier. In particular, I really noticed this in the gimbal. The gimbal's like all metal with the Mavic 2 Zoom, and the gimbal on the Mavic 3 Pro feels a little bit more plasticky, feels a little bit more, I don't want to say cheaper, but definitely a bit more lighter and budget friendly. But I get it, right? They have to reduce weight. You have 3 cameras here. I understand 3 cameras can weigh a lot. They have to figure that out some way, somehow. And that brings me to the next thing, which I absolutely love, and I feel kind of spoiled, to be honest, but it's the battery life. I think advertised the Mavic 3 Pro is something like 43 minutes, and the Mavic 2 Zoom at the time was like 26 or 27 minutes. I don't really remember. You'll never get the advertised battery life. That's like perfect conditions, you know, in a lab and so forth. Realistically, what I am actually getting with the Mavic 3 Pro is roughly somewhere between 27 minutes and about 33 minutes, something like that. With the Mavic 2 Zoom, I was getting somewhere between maybe like 14 minutes to 17, 18 minutes, but nowhere near the 20 plus that was advertised. That's expected. Okay, and finally, let's talk about the little enclosure, like housing, gimbal, lock, feature, whatever you want to call it. On the Mavic 2 Zoom, you had this like globe looking clear glass thing that went over the gimbal. And I hated it at first. It's always really hard to like clip in and take off and so forth. The new enclosure, the thing that actually encloses the whole drone, keeps it all together for the Mavic 3 Pro, I love it. I think it's a brilliant idea. It works very well. I really like that feature. I know there's a lot of people that are complaining about it. They don't like it. I saw a couple of reviews where people just absolutely hate it. But I don't know what to tell you, I like it. And finally, let's talk about the bag with the Fly More combo. I love it. I think it's wonderful. I'm not planning on buying anything else unless I really start using the drone and really taking it out to like bizarre places. I might get a hard case, but the bag that comes with it is leaps and bounds better than the bag that came with the Mavic 2 Zoom or the Mavic 2 Pro in general. I thought those bags were terrible, and I threw them out and got a case. So if you're looking for that package, again, with the Fly More combo, the bag that comes with it is really good, really usable and practical.
Hands down, one of my favorite smart features is Active Track. Mavic 3 Pro has Active Track 5.0, and it does a great job of keeping me in the frame and tracking me at all times, even when I disappear under tree branches. So if you're a one-man band like I am, these features are just priceless. Mavic 2 Zoom also had Active Track 2.0, and I loved it at the time. But now that I'm using Mavic 3 Pro's Active Track 5.0, I just feel absolutely spoiled.
Okay, so it's not all pros. What are some of the cons? The first one off the bat is the price. The cost of entry to buy one of these now is just incredibly expensive. I know there's different models. I know that DJI had the Mavic 3 Classic, which is a little bit more budget friendly. They had the Mavic 3, which I understand now is completely discontinued, which is kind of weird. And then they came out with the Mavic 3 Pro. The next biggest con that I have relates to the 3 cameras. I wish all 3 cameras were recording in 10-bit. You would have to upgrade to the Cine version. And that's just a shame. I think the best way to sum it up is if I had to rate the lenses, it would be best, great, and then good. Okay, the first one, which is the main one, which is the 1X, is the 4/3 CMOS Hasselblad lens. I know that's a mouthful to say, but it's incredible. It's everything you could have ever wanted in a pro lens. You can shoot in multiple picture profiles. You have D-Log, you have D-Log-M, you have HLG. You also have different resolutions. You can shoot in 5.1K at 50 frames per second. You can also shoot in 4K at 120 frames per second. Not to mention you have an aperture of f2.8 all the way up to f11. It feels pro level. You can do a lot with it. I think the Hasselblad color science is great. It's phenomenal. It does a great job. So no complaints there at all. And for pictures, you get 20 megapixels, which should be fine and should give you a little bit of room to crop in. Now let's talk about the 3X or the 70mm equivalent. You don't get D-Log, but you do get D-Log-M. And D-Log-M is not too bad. You can still color grade. It's pretty neutral. There's a lot of detail that you can pull in and out. I think it's my favorite lens. I know a lot of YouTubers are saying that, but I really do think it's my favorite lens. You get a lot of parallax, you get a lot of dynamics. It really is an interesting lens to see. It shoots some really interesting things. So having those first 2 lenses really does help drive the story for you. Now let's talk about the 7X, the 166mm equivalent, the 1/2 inch, CMOS sensor. This lens is super frustrating. It's really cool and you want to use it, but it doesn't have the pro features. So at the end of the day, sometimes you almost kind of like regret using it. You can only shoot in the normal profile and it has a fixed aperture of f3.4. Now, if I'm being brutally honest, the image quality is just okay. It's usable, but not in a pro settings. Like when you actually look at the footage and when you compare it to the other lenses, it's noticeable, and that's the problem. I don't know, I'm kind of mixed about it right now, but being brutally honest and giving you guys an honest review, it's just frustrating, it's a tease. Okay, so where do I think the Mavic Pro line is headed? I think likely what DJI will do is kind of continue this trend of either adding more cameras, which will increase weight, which will increase cost, and decrease battery life and so forth. So that's probably unlikely. What's more likely, in my opinion, is they'll probably combine the 3X and 7X camera into one lens with a larger sensor. And that would probably kind of keep the real estate a little bit more as far as size and keeping that weight reduction. It might add a little bit more to it, but that seems a little bit more practical to me. And I think from a consumer level, that would be kind of exciting, right? If you have that 1X, that 24 millimeter, that wide focal length, and then they find a way to combine the 3X and 7X into a larger sensor, increase the quality, offer 10-bit, offer that low light performance and give you something that's usable in a pro setting. That seems more likely in my opinion. If you already have the Mavic 3 Classic or the Mavic 3 before they discontinued it, I don't know, I don't think so. Unless you really, really need the two cameras, the two additional lenses, the 3X and the 7X. I see myself using the 1X and the 3X almost all the time, and it really does give you that extra dynamics, that parallax, that really Michael Bay look, that Hollywood look that everyone's looking for. For me, it made complete sense because I was coming from a Mavic 2 Zoom. This is a significant upgrade. Tech is moving way too fast. It doesn't make sense to buy the next upgrade every 6 months. And honestly, with the way that DJI handled things by releasing the Mavic 3 and then the Mavic 3 Classic and now the Mavic 3 Pro, possibly discontinuing the Mavic 3, I'm not sure what the official word is, that was really sloppy and I'm sure it angered a lot of really loyal customers. I mean, essentially, they kind of made a very expensive line obsolete. So I don't know how I feel about that. It's just a reminder to me to not always try to buy the latest and coolest thing because you can get burnt and they're not worth your hard-earned money. But when you're coming from a 4 or 5 year gap, I don't know what it is, it's been a long time, this is significant. This makes a lot of sense. And always make sure you can make your money back on the camera gear that you're buying. Otherwise, does it really make sense to you? That's it for me, guys. I hope you found this video informative. I'll catch you guys on the next one.